Hey everyone, it's Desiree, and I am here today with a collaboration video with Yvette Creates, and I know she has her last name in there too, and I'm afraid we will mispronounce that, so yeah. So, as I said, this is a collaboration video, and I will have all of her links down below. She has a beautiful blog, she has a YouTube channel, and one of the things that I love when it comes to her videos is she does provide some techniques to inspire everyone, but she does her techniques in a simplistic way. What she also loves is pattern paper. She loves to play with her pattern paper by using up 6x6 pads, using them for backgrounds and so forth. And I just thought, with the Simplicity series that I have, it's just, for those of you that enjoy that series a lot, I thought that this was a great collaboration to do. So she'll be able to give you even more ideas on what you can do with your pattern papers so that we can get through those. And yeah, to get more. Absolutely. I hoard my papers, so this series absolutely helps me to get through those pattern papers. And what I love to do is to create what I refer to as note cards. Some pattern papers also allow us, packs allow us to expand and use just the pattern paper. For me, when it comes to these types of papers, they do the work for us. We don't have to. Maybe you're that creator that, doesn't want to get into alcohol markers or watercolors or colored pencils or stamping, which is something very basic. So by just using pattern paper, we can create our cards in no time, and they are beautiful and still absolutely works of art. So the pattern paper that I chose is by Paper Rose, and it's called the Enchanted Garden. And if this is still available, I'll make sure it's also linked down below. This is a 6x6 paper collection by them, and it has 18 double-sided pattern papers. And what's great with this one, there are 3 of each of the designs, which means you don't have to challenge yourself with, okay, well, what side do I want to use? Because sometimes that's a struggle too. So let me real quick flip through these, and then we will get started in our creations. So here's our cover page. Now that's only one-sided. And let's see here. Let me real quick page through this. So you have this beautiful design, and that's what our back looks like. Here's some great pieces to fussy cut. If you enjoy fussy cutting, I'm not one that does, but this is a way to do that. And then it even gives you some sentiments that you can add to your cards in no time. Beautiful background piece. That piece is absolutely gorgeous. Create a beautiful landscape or a portrait, whichever way you would want to go with that. And then there's a great background piece there. Here's another light shade. These shades are beautiful. You get some brush strokes, some watercolor effects, some prints. So it's got a little bit of everything going on in this pack. Nice bold prints in beautiful, what I'm going to call an indigo blue, but these lighter shades can go into that, what I call periwinkle, or a lighter blue-gray shade. Here are some great dots that can be fussy cut, and they have little tiny prints in there. And then another great background using a peachy beige color with a little bit of gold. So let's get to it, and I will show how I break these down so that we can create our cards, and how we'll add those sentiments since the set came with that. So let's get started. Okay, so let's get started. So with any paper pad, when I do this, I divide it. So if there's multiples of those cardstocks, I will make a pile of each. In this case, this paper pad had 3 sets of each of the cardstocks. So 3 of each, basically. So we didn't have to think, okay, what do we want to use for the front? Do I have to choose, and so forth? So once I had those piles set, and what I also the piles that I make are the ones that have images that can be cut out, like I said before. So this paper pad really packed a punch. So it had beautiful images, just like this, where you just have to cut it down, and that is perfect for the front of your card. They had pieces that were for backgrounds. They had pieces that you could fussy cut. They had sentiments. So there was really a lot in this when it came to this 6x6 pad. Now, just so you know, this paper does have a sheen to it, a glossy, not glossy, but like a semi-gloss finish to the top of it. So it's not like your normal cardstocks that you would use from like Simon Says or Spellbinders, or My Favorite Things, you know, that type of feel to it. It does have a slick surface, so you will have that texture to the front. But this had florals. This had multiple floral images. It had wood backgrounds. So you can see here, I am just cutting it down. Now with the one pad, the one section that I separated, I cut all of those down to be the 4 1/4 by 5 1/2. All of these cards are going to be standard A2 size cards. All right, and that is the 4 1/4 by 5 1/2. And they're top folding if they're portrait, and they're side folding if they're landscape. That's how I set them up. As I continue to page through, I'm really, guys, there is no thought process for this for me. And don't get me wrong, I used to be that person to map it out, to say, okay, I want this one to be this, and I want this one to be this, and I want this one to be this, and I want this one. And really, I would really map it out. Now, I'm not saying that's a bad thing. Where I'm saying it's a bad thing is if you ask me, what did I cut this to? What were all my cuts? I don't know. I just went ahead and cut panels. So I have my main background panels. I have smaller panels, whether that's going to be a strip that's going to go down the side, whether that's going to be a center panel in the center or off to the side. So that's just what I did. I think by having that organic feel, you can get so much variation when it comes to your cards. Now, the background papers that I chose, I can't remember if I showed them in the first video where I'm talking live, but I actually ended up with using a black and a gray, and I call it like a periwinkle blue. I think it really pulled out those lighter shades of blue in the watercolor effect that they had. And you'll see those towards the end. I thought I lost all this footage, guys. Oh my goodness. I was so upset. Oh my goodness. So you can see here, I took that one panel where the 9 watercolor dots were with the gold flecks, and I'm fussy cutting around them. Now these are really cool because when you set them up on your card base, it looks like they're 3D. So again, I'm just fussy cutting right close to it. Now what you're going to see is I'm going to cut out these sentiments. Now I did save all of those sentiments, and I do use a paper trimmer. Now again, it says paper and glue. And honestly, guys, you're going to see that your pattern papers can do so much work for you. I don't want you sitting there thinking, oh, well, all I have are papers. I can't make cards. Oh, yes, you can. This is an absolutely gorgeous set for anybody, for a gift, and I'll talk about that again. But these papers, they do the work for you. You just simply cut. So get an adhesive, get a pair of scissors, and get a trimmer. Trimmer just makes it quicker for you. when it comes to that. Do you need a trimmer? No. You can use a ruler and a pencil and then cut along that line to make your blocks and your squares. Here I'm cutting strips. I'm just cutting 6-inch strips because we know what I also love to do, especially with scraps, is we're going to make a stripped panel. And it's a beautiful backdrop when it comes to one of the cards, the textures and the papers. And that was something else that I really loved about this paper. It had a watercolor feel. It had a wood feel. It had all of these different textures just with the paper. And remember, it is paper. We can tear it, we can rip it, we can cut it. So there's a couple of them where I tore the edge and create that jagged edge, that different type of texture. This piece I thought was phenomenal. This is just watercolor flowers, and all I'm doing is just fussy cutting around them. And I'm being particular with the ones that I'm choosing, just to make a small, arrangement on top of one of the cards. But again, I do work in odd numbers, even with my floral arrangements. So I needed to make sure that I had 3 or 5 flowers. I had to make sure I had 3 or 5 leaves. Or if they were smaller, I could go into 7. It's just something that's more appealing to my eye. And it does fall into the rule of thirds, or I think I said that right. When it comes to pictures, things are usually not straight on. Things are usually off to the side or off into a section. But never an image is directly dead center when it comes to the photos. So it's kind of how my eye works. And I do let my eyes tell me what works and what doesn't. There's times where I'm putting something together and it's like, whoa, no, that just doesn't look right. And then if I just shift it or if I just move it a little bit, okay, that works. And that's something that you can try. Maybe you've put something directly in the center and your eye's just going, oh, heck no, not going to work here. It just doesn't look right. And then that gets you frustrated and you walk away. And sometimes walking away is good. And when you come back, if you just shift it a little bit to the left or a little bit to the right or up or down, you'll be like, oh, yes, kind of really like that. And in a way, as card makers, we do that because I'm also one where I really don't like sometimes to add a sentiment because it takes away from all of that work that we put on our card in the front, whether we've stenciled, whether we've ink blended or color penciled a floral image or another type of image that we used our favorite mediums with. We don't want to color that. That's why there's the inside. And we can put our sentiments on the inside. Let that recipient that's getting it admire all of that beautiful work that you did. And that even goes for when you cut paper. Again, let it do the work for you. And if you're that person that just hoards that paper, oh, let it go. You can create just some beautiful, beautiful things. You can see here, whenever I do my simplicity, I do it in a production line. So when I look at my paper pads, I'm separating them out into piles. I make sure, okay, here's the middle of the pad because it's got 2 pieces each of each design. Divide it in half, tear it in half, boom, here's the side that I'm going to cut. Here's the side that's going to be the accenting pieces and so forth. I even do that after I have those piles. Then I start doing my cuts. After I have those piles, then I come in and I do my fussy cutting and my sentiment cutting if they're in there. Set those aside. I create my card bases, and that's what I'm doing here. I have my cardstock already cut to 4 1/4 by 11, and then I'll score it at 5 1/2. And then I'll decide, okay, is this going to be a landscape where it'll be a side fold, or if it's a portrait, it'll be a top fold card. Here's where I'm coming in with my solid cardstock. I do like to add 2 or 3 shades of solid cardstock when I'm doing my simplicity series. Now, Would I use a 110 pound? No. I like to use the Recollections 65 pound paper pads. I think they are a great buy. You get 50 sheets, and there's usually 4 to 5 different shade values of that color. So if you get one of aquas, if you get one of pinks or reds, you already have your colors that you need. And again, these are 65 pounds. So they're not going to add too much more weight to your card. When we use those 110 pounds, and by all means, you can certainly do that. Just know it's going to make your card a lot heavier. I don't know how much. I don't think it's that vastly a lot, but it will do that. It's going to make your front heavier, and your back is not going to have that same weight. So for me, since it's a portrait card, that back fold may curve in because that front just has so much weight on it. It's fine if it's a landscape or if it's a side opening card, but it's just something to think about, and it's something that I've gone through. Just saying. But I do really enjoy those Recollection papers. Now you can see here, now I'm going to start building. So from those solids, I cut the 4 1/4 by 5 1/2. I did cut my panels down instead of the 4 1/4 by 5 1/2. Like I said, I did cut them down to be 4 by 5 1/4. All right. So now I'm layering. So now I've got my basis going on here. So those are set aside because I know that they're set. They may be pulled apart, but now I want to play with these cutouts that I did. So I first pulled out the circles, and these were just great. So I have them placed down on a cardstock, a piece of the 110 pound Recollection cardstock, cut to 4 1/4 by 5 1/2. So I'm keeping that panel full. And once I have these set, I'm going to glue them down. I'm using my liquid adhesive, and I'm going to set those in place. And then I'm going to come in with my scissors, and I'm going to cut along the edge. When we create our own background paper, and that's what we're doing here, always let your pieces go off the edge and then trim them. It'll look more like a true background paper, and you designed it. And it creates this flow that goes on. All right, so again, it truly does look like that background paper that you were looking for. Here I'm taking one of those backgrounds, I've glued it onto my solid cardstock, and I've added just another one of the wood panels in the front. So a sentiment can sit there, or another image could sit there, or you could do more fussy cutting. These panels here, this is the wood panel, love this for background. And you can see what I glued that on, I have 2 of those set aside. So now what I'm building are the bases of the cards. I'm looking for that base, and I'm just putting them together. Here I'm tearing off a piece of that paper because I really loved that gold fleck when it came to that, and just tearing it along that gold fleck, I now have that interest going on to the side. I love this pattern print too. It's absolutely gorgeous. It's the large one's just smaller. I have this one here. This looks like an ocean. To me, it just really did. And now I'm just going to set a strip, one of my spare strips along the back. I'm going to line that up to make sure that it's straight as I can get it, because I really don't like measuring. Just saying. And then I'm going to trim off that edge. And now we have that panel. So that panel is just a different size. It's not the 4 1/4 by 5 1/2 when it comes to this. I am going to set that down onto my gray cardstock. I'm going to line it up on the one side, and then I'm just going to take my scissors and go straight up. You could keep that strip there. You don't have to cut that off, because that's where your sentiment could have gone. So now we have our back panels set, so to speak. Okay, we have these ready to just take on a sentiment. For this one, I'm going to take a piece of white cardstock. I've trimmed that down, and I'm going to use up some of the strips that I have. Now, those long strips, I have those set aside. So we're going to do like a little bit of a cardstock weave. When I used to quilt, and wow, this technique just really came out of my head now. We used to call it something specific, but a bias weave. So we would take our fabrics and we would run them through a bias, create our own bias, and that's where you take your material and you either fold it in half, or the true way is to fold up a quarter on one side and then fold in the other side, so you have this opening down the middle and then flat on the other side. Yeah, you're all like, really, Des, you're going to tell us about this? I'm just telling you about it. And they would be bias strips. And we would take those and we would weave them. We would create a basket weave with them. And then we would use that as a panel to sew with. I used to make blocks and put them into quilts. Or I would make them and then I would cringe because I would cut them after I put the square together. I would cut it on an angle. Yeah, I would just cut into that little sucker, and on the square would half be the weave, and then the other half would be this other fancy material, and I would put bedspreads together with that. But it's really fun, and I've done this a couple times. I love weaving the paper. It gives you, again, there's this word, texture, and it gives you this dimension. And just mixing these papers together, all right, you can get some great images that come from it. So as I'm building this on here, I only tacked the top part so that that would stay in place. And then I just weave the papers in, and then I just lift up the corner to get that. Now at the end, I'll show you all the cards slowly, I think, of what we made here, and we'll go through them. So here we're going to take all of these strips and just create our background. I am using liquid adhesive, and usually I do use a tape runner for this, or I use double-sided tape. I chose my liquid adhesive because of the fact this paper, it has that slick surface, and it's on both sides. It's a semi-gloss look. The glue, I was afraid with the tape runners, they would just pop right off eventually. I think that a lot with tape runners. That's why you really don't see me using them that often. And when you do, it's because I found one and I'm going to use it up. I'm just saying. Because I know I had told you all, for those of you that have been here for a while and watch my videos, that I was moving into another area of the house. Well, no, we're not going to do that, but there is some movement going on in the room. So yeah, we're still in total chaos, which is fine. I seem to be working well with it. But you can see that's why I chose the glue, okay? Because this will, once it dries, these are not going to come up or pop off, because that glue is going to take care of it. So you can see this beautiful panel, and the most satisfying thing to do for some reason is to just cut these ends. Just cut up alongside of that piece of cardstock. It is 4 1/4 by 5 1/2. I just love doing that, and yes, I cut right on that angle because my strips were not long enough from corner to corner. Totally forgot that, but you know what? We can make it work. We're going to take another one of these panels, one of these strips that I have left over, and we're just going to put it to the back. So I am just going to put glue on that edge. I'm going to set that right on top of that. I did not like that one, so I'm moving to another one. And what I'm using is the side of my scissors right along that piece of cardstock to go straight up onto it. You could use a paper trimmer if you want, but just setting your scissors right up along that edge, you'll have that straight line to go up, and as long as they're long blades. So here we're going to play with those die cuts that we fussy cut. Now, I loved this. I thought the wood background, because of its color, was perfect for these soft watercolor flowers and leaves. So now I'm just playing with the placement, how it's going to look. I'm going to cut this one leaf arrangement in half. And again, I'm making sure there's not too many blues together. I'm making sure that I've got this mixture going around on that panel so that each one sticks out. That's also why I did keep a white border around each of these pieces. I was not worried about the white border around the circles because they were going to go onto a white panel. So, but that's the reason why I did keep this white border on these, just to help them pop off. And by only putting my glue in the center of each of these flowers, or the ends when I tuck them underneath, they will actually lift up just ever so slightly. So that helps to give just a little bit of dimension on that. So you can see I'm laying these out, but right about here is where my phone died. So you're going to get to see this all over again. Okay, so I hope you enjoyed that. And basically what I really wanted to make sure that you saw is how I break down a 6x6 pad. And really, this helps me to build my stash for cards, for those occasions that just simply pop up, or when I forget that the occasion's coming up and make the card. It's usually the latter, let's be honest here. But we can build those. Now, this set here actually had sentiments that we could cut out. So there are 14 sentiments. I cut up 2 of those pages when it came to those sentiments. So I can always just keep these in a bag with this set. Maybe you want to give somebody a gift. This is a perfect gift for somebody that you know that still loves and enjoys writing on paper and sending this snail mail out. These are the pieces that I have left. Very few. There's probably a couple more panels in here that I could create another card. But from this set, I got 11 cards, and I'm going to page through them. So here are the cards where we just used the backgrounds, the papers themselves directly. I bordered it or framed it with solid cardstock from my stash, and this is the Recollection 65 pound. I love that cardstock to layer. Doesn't add too much bulk, doesn't make them too thick, but I really do enjoy it. Now, when it comes to, we got into a lot of techniques with this. So there was a couple panels that were just absolutely beautiful on their own. I am in love with this. Just cut it 4 1/4 by 5 1/2, and all of these cards are standard A2 size cards, 4 1/4 by 5 1/2, and they're either going to be top folding or side folding. When they're top folding, they're portrait. When they're side folding, for me, they are a landscape card. So I took that design because I loved it so much, and I turned one into a landscape and I turned one into a portrait based upon the way that you cut it. And I used the entire front of that card. Then we got into some layering. So here we took a background and I just took a square of the lighter shades. Here I have this is a portrait style. I cut it in just a little bit and I tore. I love paper. You can tear paper and it gives you a beautiful instant deckled edge when it comes to that background. Now, since I had a portrait, also did a landscape, again, with that watercolor and gold. Again, you can put your sentiment here. Now, this one can also go this way, too, if you want. So, again, you have your options as you're putting your cards together. Then we started doing some fussy cutting and layering. So I took that one panel and I cut out those circles, and this looks awesome. Kept it to the 4 1/4 by 5 1/2, and this is cut, but it looks like they're 3D because of that shadow. So a great background that we made ourselves. We made another background with the strips, and then I just tucked in a piece of the cardstock in behind it for the floral images. but use up those scraps. I love making stripped backgrounds. I think it is awesome, and it is a great way to clean all of those out. Then we took some more strips. I took one of those backgrounds. I put a piece of white cardstock in the back, just tore off each of the ends, created a grid. Again, you could add dimension with that. I could put my sentiment up here, or I could put it along here. And then finally, we did some fussy cutting, and I just have my group of florals down here in the corner so that I can add a sentiment as well. So you can see from this is what we have left. These are the sentiments that I have available. We were able to create 11 cards. I think anybody that you know that enjoys writing notes to people would absolutely love this as a set. You could package it up this way and then just plop in those sentiments right on the inside. So in no time, you have a perfect gift. This took me 1 hour to do from start to finish. Of course, you're watching a very sped up version, but that was the total time when it came to when we started cutting to coming to this point here. All right, so actually 1 hour and 3 minutes to be exact. Again, please, Yvette's information is going to be down below. She has a YouTube channel, she has a blog, and she also has, of course, other social media. So I encourage you, go check out her channel, see all of the wonderful techniques, see how she uses pattern paper, because for her side, she will be doing that as well. I thoroughly enjoy doing the collaborations when you look at the same concept, because it's neat to see how each individual interprets that technique or idea. So please make sure you check her out. It'll be linked down below. As always, if this paper pad is still available, I will have it linked down below in the video description. If you have any questions or comments, leave those down below as well, and I will make sure I get back to you as soon as I can. If you haven't yet, I'd love for you to subscribe, be part of my group, and also show Yvette some love too over there and hit that subscribe button for her. Make sure you hit the thumbs up, and remember, smile, laugh every day, but always, always be creative, everyone. Until the next video, and enjoy.